Welcome to Cardinals Cover 2 with Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki. Cardinals Cover 2 is brought to you by Arizona Cardinals Podcasts. Visit azcardinals.com/podcasts. From the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center, here's Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki.
No, we are not at the Dignity Health Arizona Cardinals Training Center. Once again, day 2 of our coverage from the 2019 Scouting Combine in Indianapolis, a special Thursday edition of Cards Cover 2. Craig Grialou and Mike Jurecki inside the Indianapolis Convention Center. A little bit more activity than there was yesterday. That is because we actually heard from the draft prospects here, from the running backs and offensive linemen, and those two position groups also were entertaining the crowd. And yes, entertaining the crowd is the apropos phrase in the bench press just over our right shoulder. A little bit of a stadium setup, MJ. You've got coaches, scouts on one side. They open it up to the fans, and in dead center for everyone to see, of course, no pictures, no video, these prospects.
So it didn't happen then?
Unless you were a witness, unless you were in the building, it did.
Right, because they are recorded as actual stats and measurements for each player.
Yeah, how many times can you bench press 225 pounds? And it does get loud in here, and, of course, the fans get excited. But
they got some meathead who's a strength coach, and he's in – I mean, now I'm being facetious, but he's up there as a spotter, and the crowd gets into it.
Oh, absolutely.
And you got to make sure you lock your arms so you don't get credit for that. And a lot of guys, you got to leave your butt on the bench. And a lot of guys, it's awkward because they almost have like this little shape between their back and their butt. So you may put up 25, but at the end they say you're only good for 22, 23. And we're doing a show right next to Floyd Reese, former general manager in the National Football League, and they were doing play-by-play. And he literally said here on the show they're going to dock him 2, and they did dock a player 2. So Floyd Reese, right next to us, doing a show in Nashville, is on top of things here, and he's a former general manager. But I actually tried the bench press earlier.
Don't spoil it.
No, I'm just saying.
Don't spoil it.
I'm just saying okay. I tried it.
All right. That's good.
I didn't.
You tried.
I tried.
And we'll have to wait and see whether it was a success or a failure. But the bench press portion of the combine just wrapped up about 15, 20 minutes ago. And I guess again tomorrow and Saturday as well. Yeah.
These sticks.
And
if you can't make fun of yourself,
that's true.
Then we're in the wrong business.
On that note, let's take off on this Thursday from the Scouting Combine. Here's what's ahead on the show today. We get the national perspective on Kyler Murray from Albert Breer, who does a great job with Sports Illustrated, specifically the MMQB site. You'll hear from the general manager. Steve Keim sits down with us.
Time.
Plus, we go behind the scenes on the bench press process with Cardinals Pro Scouting Director Quentin Harris. And, of course, your questions via social media using the hashtag CardsCover2, hashtag CardsCover2, using the number 2 to get involved in the show. But without further ado, the news of the day, and with
Kyle Murray all day.
Apologies to Jason Witten, who this afternoon decided to return to the Cowboys after a year with ESPN on Monday Night Football. That is kind of a little bit of a buzz, but the big-time buzz,
Hang
MJ.
on a second. We got to stop here because
a little bit of a buzz, right?
For who? The Cowboys?
Yeah, and I'm sure for ESPN because now there's
he was going to get fired at some point. Let's be honest here. Come in, seriously. I mean, listen, I know it's a tough job. I get it, but they made a decision. Kurt Warner was a runner-up. I think we could see Matt Hasselbeck in there, Tim Hasselbeck, one or the other. Kurt Warner was a runner-up, but Kurt's doing Monday night games. The problem I have is he may pass Larry Fitzgerald on some of these receptions and touchdowns, so Larry could go back to 3 versus 2.
It just means Fitz has to keep playing another season or 2 seasons.
No, Witten needs to stay retired. It's a young man's game. You had a great job making $5-7 million. Listen, I get it. I'm a big fan of the person, the player. He misses football. Maybe he was thrown into Monday Night Football, which is a huge job. So we'll move on. But it's not a buzz here today.
Well, the big buzz
was in Dallas is a big buzz because I did ride by or walk by, I should say, and I did see Jerry's party bus.
Jerry Jones?
And they got strobe lights in there. Who knows what goes on in there? Just ask Dean Blandino.
The measurement folks are in. We do know how tall and how much Kyler Murray weighs. Those measurements came in this morning, and that did cause a stir here in Indianapolis. But officially, Murray checked in at 5'10" and 1/8 inch. By the way, the shortest quarterback measured at the combine since 2003. So
Didn't
keep
we have
that
a guy
in your back
today
of
that
mind.
checked in at 5'3"? Wasn't there a quarterback this morning?
I don't think so.
No, I thought it was a quarterback that checked in. He was like almost not even
5'3"?
Yeah,
I don't know
maybe
about
he's
that.
got to switch positions.
Yeah. High school player, maybe?
I don't know.
Pop Warner?
He looked like Muggsy Bogues out there.
But the interesting part on this is now when you look at Kyler Murray is, okay, well, now you got to start comparing him. Compare him to Baker Mayfield. Compare him to Russell Wilson. Those were the names that we kept hearing when people brought up Kyler Murray. And the NFL Network did a great job of kind of breaking it down side by side. And Murray, as we found out, is actually 3 pounds heavier than Russell Wilson. Murray 207. Wilson at the combine checked in at 204. And amongst the three as far as height, Murray was the shortest. But the other measurable that people point to, and I did a lot of reading on this, and there was a lot of talk over the last 24, 48 hours, and that's hand size.
You want to measure hands right here? Let's go.
All right, let's go. All right, ready?
I got to knock the sweat off my
All right,
hand.
well, go make sure you go thumb to thumb.
All right, so who's got bigger fingers?
Probably you. You're all skin. You're
Look at this.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, there you go, right there. He's got large hands. But not as large, or maybe larger than Kyler Murray's hands.
Oh, I have much bigger.
You got paws.
Listen, I was at the Super Bowl one year. They were parading around Matt Barkley, and he had the shoulder injury, dropped to the 4th round. So I was reading up that he had small hands. So I interviewed him, and his hands were shorter than yours.
Well, you got large
So I'm
hands,
not
but you still have trouble catching the football.
When? Okay, I got another stat for you.
All right.
Murray's hands are the same as Matt Ryan, Andy Dalton, Sam Bradford, Lamar Jackson, and Mitch Trubisky.
And larger than Baker Mayfield.
Smaller than Mike Jurecki.
That's very, very true. So everyone is now talking about the height and the weight, and specifically the weight. How does he carry that weight? And
Okay.
now that's a discussion point too, because he was weighed this morning.
So
was
he
that
drank
after
5 gallons of water?
Was that after a big breakfast?
Or he just drank 5 gallons of water.
And now the question is, okay, can you maintain that weight, and what happens? And we'll get into it during the show when we talk with Albert Breer and among others. Okay, what happens in week 10, week 12? Are you still at 207, or most guys lose weight as the season progresses?
Okay, I'm not even going to wait to then. I'm going to wait to his pro day, March 13th. Is he 202? Because the first thing you think of is this guy with a small frame. You put weight on, how's it going to affect his speed? He didn't run here. He's probably going to run a 4.33 at his pro day. So I'm curious to see what his weight is at 202 is, because listen, he was 185. His agent came out and said he was 205. Clearly, he's either drank a lot of water, been working out, maybe it's mass, I don't know. But I'm more curious about March 13th. But you do bring up a good point along with Albert Breer. Can the body hold up in week 12 or week 13, 14? Because we heard Sean McVay today talk about Todd Gurley. They overused him.
Yeah.
And they're going to find a way not to overuse him, because the month of September doesn't mean a whole lot. And Gurley was killing it. We get to December and January, you have to preserve a guy like Todd Gurley. And if you see his legs, you wouldn't think you would have to do that. But I think Sean McVay learned the hard way. You cannot ride that horse for 20 to 25 games.
And
25 weeks.
As you mentioned, we've got to wait for the pro day, because Kyler Murray, according to reports, is not expected to run or do any on-field testing here at the Combine. He'll go through medicals, interview with teams, but we will not see him in action during the quarterbacks. He will not join his other quarterbacks as far as throwing or doing the L cone, the vertical jump, or any of that stuff. He's going to sit it out and wait till the pro day.
Do you have a problem with that?
yes and no. One is because, and we talked about this, he said he was, quote, fully committed to football. Well, sitting out is not fully committed in my opinion. Yet at the same time,
decision.
Yes, and at the same time, this is the last time in which a player and his agent kind of have a say-so as far as what they do, because once you sign that contract, then all bets are off. You know, you're a part of that team. But I would like to see him stand up amongst his peers, so to speak, and specifically because of his weight. How does he look?
Okay, I get that part. Andrew Luck didn't work out. Didn't affect him.
A lot of guys didn't. No,
Sam
you're correct.
Darnold didn't work out last year. Didn't affect him. Cam Newton worked out, and he was very inconsistent. Like, there were holes in his game. Now, he went the first overall pick. These are the agents getting in the year. But on the other side, these guys love competition. I would love to see him. Now, Lamar Jackson didn't run a 40 last year because he thought they wanted to move the wide receiver. This is when the agents get involved. But I prefer guys to have competition. I want to see him throw against these other quarterbacks. But you know what? He's got nothing to prove here.
No, he doesn't. The only thing he would be able to prove is he worthy of that number 1 overall pick if the Cardinals decide to stay, or can he do enough here in Indianapolis to get a team, say maybe the Raiders, at number 4 to say, we really want Kyler Murray. Let's pick up the phone and call Steve Keim and say, hey, what's it going to take for us to swap picks?
Didn't you listen to Gruden today?
Oh, we'll get to that because this is interesting now. This all of a sudden has become a talking point, and it's because of the gentleman over to my right here. Earlier today, Jon Gruden spoke, and the first question was asked by, and what was the question?
How attractive is the first overall pick?
And his
and
response
Chucky
was,
gave me a little,
quote, pretty attractive. And that was basically it. But, of course, when you talk about the Raiders, you know, you would think that they have their franchise quarterback in Derek Carr. And that was a talk yesterday when General Manager Mike Mayock spoke to the media. He was asked about Carr and his future with the Raiders.
Well, I mean, we've got a young quarterback that we think's a franchise quarterback that's going to be 28 years old in March. So we're pretty happy with where we are, especially with our backup quarterback who we signed last year, McCarron. We feel like we're pretty good at the quarterback position. I think Derek Carr is a franchise quarterback. I truly believe that. Now, do I also believe that it's a general manager and head coach's job to keep their eyes open to improve any position on a football team? Sure, but I think it's really difficult to try to improve over a franchise quarterback like the one we have in our building right now.
Did you catch that, MJ? He said, is a franchise quarterback. And as we talked about
yesterday. Did he use the word right now?
No, that was the words. Those were the big words yesterday when Steve Keim was asked about Josh Rosen. So we are now dissecting words and where they're placed in a soundbite or when they're written down on a piece of paper to try to figure out the meaning here. That's what the media does. That's what everyone here in Indianapolis does because you have so much time between now and the NFL draft.
The national media didn't hear Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim say they're committed to Josh Rosen. They only heard right now.
Well, commit was never the word used.
Well, he's our quarterback.
Yes.
They've maintained that.
True. But even when Kingsbury said Josh Rosen is our guy,
yeah,
people still didn't believe.
I get it. I love it.
Yeah,
I
it's
love
great.
it. I walk around here, and it's great. I mean, there's so much excitement for this first overall pick. I love it. Cardinals, keep what you're doing. You're in the news. Your logo's everywhere. People think you're going to draft Kyler Murray. I don't even know what's going on at this point, but I'm still going with Josh Rosen.
So
I'm riding with Rosen.
Mayock yesterday says is a franchise quarterback, talking about Derek Carr. Well, today, Jon Gruden was asked about Derek Carr and his future with the Oakland Raiders.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I think it was well said. Yeah, he's our franchise quarterback, yes. I'll try to make that clear.
And there, Gruden used the word "our" franchise quarterback. So there's a difference. General manager says is, the head coach says are.
Okay, I know everyone thinks that Chucky wants a new quarterback. I get that. And he's actually, before he preferred a 6'4", 6'3", 225.
Changed his tune at the Senior Bowl.
Yes, and I get it because you look at Baker Mayfield, Patrick Mahomes, Mitch Trubisky, some of these other – I get it. Listen, when you trade Khalil Mack and Amari Cooper, Derek Carr, he's been through some injuries. I think he's lacking confidence. If in the smart move, you keep Carr, you draft the pass rusher, whether you want to move up to 1 or 4. Now you're going to get the second or third one. You draft a wide receiver in the first round. It's not going to happen overnight. They got to deal with the Chiefs and the Chargers and the Broncos now. So Jon Gruden will get this turned around. But I don't know what else they can say that Derek Carr is the guy. So I believe him. And I know this is silly season, and they could still draft a quarterback. The Broncos could draft a quarterback.
Okay.
I believe what they're saying is true because they have so many needs.
So, yeah, and so do the Cardinals. But
Cardinals already have a quarterback.
The other news that Gruden broke this morning, he told the media that, yes, they spoke with Dwayne Haskins and Kyler Murray last night. They devoted 2 of their 60 interview slots here in Indianapolis to 2 quarterbacks.
And what did he ask Murray 3 different times?
No, I'm just saying.
What did he ask Murray? Are you committed to football? 3 times.
But why spend those 15 minutes
to drum up interest?
From where?
Other teams. You don't know what Gruden's going to do, right? I think I know what he's going to do. We don't know. I mean, 60 guys. I would bring in 5 guys that I didn't even think about drafting if I want to create interest.
No, that's true.
We'll see if they bring him in for 30 visits.
Yeah, that might be more telling.
60 guys, Grialou.
Yeah, but
you only got 10 draft picks.
I understand that, but there's also the potential down the road to get to know these guys.
Oh, listen, I think that happens all the time. You hear coaches, like I was listening to the general manager of the Chiefs today, and he was asked about the AFL. He said every single one of those guys playing in that league has come through the combine.
The AAF.
AAF.
Yeah.
Right. He said every one of those guys, for the majority, have come through the combine. They have researched what they did in college. They have to go back to their college grade. They'll go back to their combine grade. And he said some of those guys will be on the 90-man roster. So teams collect information 4 years down the road. Hey, this is the grade we had on the guy. So that does happen. And kick the tires. But who are the 2 top quarterbacks in the draft?
Kyler Murray and Dwayne Haskins.
And who is going to be possibly in the top 10, 2 quarterbacks drafted?
Those 2.
So let people know, hey.
And it could be part of that, what do you call it, silly season as far as, hey, maybe now the Giants, who probably need a quarterback, the Jaguars who need a quarterback.
I look at the Giants, and I think Dwayne Haskins fits the profile. But I don't know that. Kyler Murray, again, the trend has been the guys I mentioned. So, yeah, and they're doing what Cardinals wanted to do a couple years ago with Palmer. They're trying to find the heir apparent.
Yes.
He'll sit for
while
a year.
you still have a quarterback for maybe a year
Unfortunately,
or 2.
the Cardinals weren't able to do that, but they did get Rosen last year.
Speaking of Kyler Murray, certainly caused quite a buzz once the height and weight was announced. And to get a national perspective on this topic, we had a chance to catch up with Albert Breer, senior NFL reporter for Sports Illustrated's MMQB. Well, now that we know how tall and how much Kyler Murray weighs, what are your thoughts on this whole discussion and him with perhaps the number 1 overall pick or just drafted in the first round period?
Yeah, I think the weight was more important than the height, actually. I think the height part of it, I think if you're 6 foot or under, you're going to have to do some things to make it work. And that's not saying it can't work. But you're going to have to do certain things. It's like the Saints do it for Breeze, the Seahawks do some things for Russell, and whoever drafts Kyler Murray is going to have to do some stuff for him to get him vision to, set things up a certain way so he can be in the best situation to succeed. The weight, I think that's real. I think that's a very real concern because if you're going to play him a certain way, you're going to maximize his athleticism. The catch-22 there is you're going to get him hit. He didn't get hit a lot last year. So we don't know how he'd hold up against that sort of punishment because he had the best offensive line in college football last year, and he just didn't take a lot of punishment. And so I think the concern over his frame, the concern over his ability to hold up, I think that was real. And I think weighing 207 pounds, maybe some of it's fake weight. It's possible that he just, went through 5 gallons of water before he got up there. That wouldn't surprise me at all. But I think
big breakfast.
I think at least it shows. That he's capable of putting on and carrying weight, which I think is a very, very important thing.
All right, from an outside perspective, do you see Kyler Murray and the Arizona Cardinals as a fit?
I do not. I'm not ruling out the idea that Kyler Murray could be a Cardinal. I have no reason not to believe Cliff. I do think it was interesting the way Steve Keim addressed the question the other day here. I'm not even going to say I think. I know he's a good fit because I talked to Lincoln Riley about this last week. And Lincoln was a college teammate of Cliff's, coached against Cliff the last 4 years in the Big 12, and obviously had Kyler in his program the last 3 years. There's no better person outside of those two to tell you whether or not he's a fit. And Lincoln said he's absolutely positively a fit for Cliff Kingsbury. And so, there's no question. I think Cliff is adaptable to different types of quarterbacks. I mean, over the last few years, he's coached Johnny Manziel. He's coached Patrick Mahomes. He's coached Davis Webb. He's coached Baker Mayfield. So he's worked with different types of quarterbacks. But I don't think there's any question that Kyler Murray would be a very, very good fit for what they want to do.
If you're the Cardinals. Yeah. Now, in December, Steve said he was embarrassed to have the first overall pick. Now that we're in the offseason, everyone's 0-0, they're excited. Mm-hmm. Do you think they're playing it right by some of their comments? I know when we say right now, people start to read into that.
I think I think that was a little tough on Josh Rosen. Because even if you are looking to trade him, and look, I want guys to be honest, right? Like, we're all in the business of people being honest and giving us real information and everything else. I think, like, maybe a little of the collateral damage is that hangs over Josh Rosen's head a little bit now. And I don't know if it was intentional the way he phrased it. I don't know if he thought no one was going to pick up on it. But I do think that there's, a little something there that probably hangs over Josh Rosen now because the natural connection between Kyler and Cliff is there.
All right, if the Cardinals stay at number one, clearly Marcus Golden's going to test free agency. Don't see him coming back. Is the right pick Nick Bosa?
I think it depends. Look, they took a big swing on Cliff Kingsbury, right? That was... And I think Cliff's got the ability to be a good NFL head coach, but the bottom line is you just hired somebody who got fired at a Big 12 school, right? And so it's a big swing. And the organization is taking a leap of faith on the belief that Steve Keim has in Cliff Kingsbury. Okay? If you're doing that, I'd always advocate going all the way. And if Cliff Kingsbury comes to you and says, Kyler Murray is everything we want in a quarterback, everything I want in a quarterback, everything that I've envisioned a quarterback being in my offense, I think you have to trust Cliff and take him. Like, that position is too important, and even if it's Josh Rosen is an 85 out of 100 and Kyler is a 95 out of 100 in that offense, you have to do it. And so I think Nick Bosa is the best player in the draft. I think there's no way you'd be disappointed if you had Nick Bosa on your roster. But if Cliff comes to you and Cliff says, I believe Kyler Murray is the perfect player for my offense, you've already taken a big swing on hiring Cliff as your head coach. You have invested in this decision that was much criticized, right? Go all the way with it.
All right. But we know when it comes to making the pick, ownership has a say and also the general manager.
Yep. Yeah, and I mean, look, I just tell you this. I think more often than not, where organizations come undone is where coaching and scouting aren't lined up. And you've seen examples of it all over the NFL. And we can go through it. Ryan Grigson and Chuck Pagano right here in Indianapolis. Trent Baalke and Jim Harbaugh in San Francisco. A few years ago, Jeff Fisher and Les Snead in Los Angeles. We've seen these situations in the past. Like, we've seen where things come undone. And if you're not following what your coach wants to do, if you're not giving your coach players specifically for him and his schemes, I think you're going down a dangerous road. And so if Cliff Kingsbury comes to you and says, this is a perfect guy, and I'm not saying he's saying that, but if he says this is a perfect guy for my offense, I think you have to listen to him.
At 3-13, and we'll let you go after this, we know the Cardinals have a lot of holes to fill.
Yep.
I'm sure if push came to shove, Keim would love to be able to trade out of that spot to acquire more picks, fill more holes.
Yep.
Where do you see, or how far down do you think the Cardinals could go? And would there be a lot of interest in that number one overall pick?
I think the Cardinals, if they're not taking Kyler, would listen to offers. I think San Francisco and the Jets behind them would be motivated to move down. Just because those two teams have holes to fill. The Jets don't have a second-round pick. And so I think the teams behind you, the two teams directly behind you, are, basically going to be putting for sale signs in front of their picks based on whatever the circumstance is. If Nick Bosa falls to 2, maybe the Niners decide we just got to take him. I would say that the marketability of those picks is going to depend on the quarterbacks getting hot. Generally, teams don't make huge moves up the board at that level, in the top 10, unless it's for a quarterback. And so I think a lot of your ability to market that pick and get the right value for that pick is really going to depend on whether or not Kyler and Dwayne Haskins get really, really hot, the way Jared Goff and Carson Wentz got really, really hot 3 years ago. I will say that my belief is, based on the people that I've talked to, the nice thing about this year's draft is there's not a huge difference between the 5th pick and the 15th pick and the 25th pick. Once you get past Nick Bosa and Quinnen Williams, there are a lot of good defensive linemen who probably aren't at the level of those two, but a lot of guys who can play. And so you might have some flexibility to move a little further down, where you look at and you say maybe a Miami at 13 or a Washington at 15 wants to come up. You look at it and you say, well, we're going to get a defensive lineman there who could be a top 10 pick in a lot of other drafts. So you'd have some flexibility to move around, but again, I think so much that's going to depend on those quarterbacks getting hot.
Well, we know this is a busy week for you. Appreciate you stopping by here, and enjoy your time in Indianapolis.
All right, thanks, guys. You too.
Breer certainly all in on Kyler Murray. It's interesting. We're asking these guys to speculate and put them in the general manager position. Of course, it's easier when that's not your job and you're on the outside and can just say it or say this is what I would do. But there's a lot of people.
Some interesting points.
And again, when you go outside the box and you hire Cliff Kingsbury, then you want to make sure you give him every opportunity to succeed. And there's a lot of people, Breer included, that believe in order for Kingsbury to succeed, it takes a Kyler Murray quarterback to do that. And again, we'll all figure that out over the next year, 2 or 3, or beyond that when everything happens. But you're trying to forecast, and it's difficult.
I'll say this. When Keim was promoted to general manager and they hired Arians, they were joined at the hip. As a general manager and scouts, you take the evaluation from coaches on what you want. So they were in sync the whole time. Now, obviously, the roster got old. They had injuries. And they won 50 games in 5 years. But we look back at 7-8 and 1, 8-8. I'm not worried about Cliff. He leaned on Steve Keim for his coaching staff. He's leaning on Steve Keim for everything, okay? And Keim is in that role because he's been in the NFL he's got so many connections. So, listen, they're all going to be on the same page when we get to draft date. Although, are you going to have disagreements leading into the draft? Sure. You're going to have a scout that's going to want to stand on a table for a certain player, and then they're going to go to the director of player personnel and go, what do you think? And then what kind of grade did you have on him? So you don't want a lot of yes men in your draft.
Exactly.
Room. But on draft day, we're all on the same page.
Correct.
There's no surprises. It's not like they're going to be on the clock and, okay, are we going to take Murray? No. All those discussions will take place before the draft. So, listen, I understand. If you want to connect the dots on paper, Murray's played in the air raid offense. He's played in the RPOs. Josh has been the RPO guy. Maybe he's had done a little air raid. He played for 3 different systems in college, so I don't want to say he hasn't. Does he fit the profile? Yes. But this team has bigger needs, okay? We talk about it the entire season. And if they lose Marcus Golden, let's go out and get a pass rusher. Let's get a wide receiver. I get it. He's the flavor of the month, and he's going to be the flavor of the month. I like chocolate ice cream. Maybe some people like strawberry, okay? I get it. But I'm taking the pass rusher, and I'm not looking on. And listen, we got to wait 3 years for these guys. You give Josh Rosen the talent and the weapons and the protection, I think he's going to be a good quarterback. Is he going to be a great quarterback? That remains to be seen. We don't know if any of these guys. Baker Mayfield is trending in the right direction, but we need to let this play out. And listen, I think they're doing their due diligence. I'm sure I would love to know this. What grade did they have on Rosen last year? And what grade do they have on Murray? Because it goes back to you, stick to your board, best available player. But what I always say, there's always a need in there.
True.
And we're never going to find out what the grades are, okay? Because I got to think Nick Bosa quarterback trumps position players, but they don't need one. So I got to think Nick Bosa is ranked very high on their board, and I don't know anything. That's just me guessing out loud. We talked to people here. Who's the best player in the draft?
Nick Bosa. And
Take Nick Bosa.
That's certainly the decision now that General Manager Steve Keim has to address and has to answer, and that's what will happen between now and the end of April. Speaking of the General Manager, we teased this yesterday, our sit-down with Steve Keim. We touched on a number of topics, including free agency, but we started off our conversation talking about the number 1 overall pick. I want to take you back to the end of the season, and you mentioned that having the number 1 overall draft pick was, quote, embarrassing.
Yeah.
But you'd feel a little bit better as we get closer to the draft. Are we at that point yet?
Oh, we've been weeks into it. So there's no doubt that the value of the number 1 pick is it's big. And again, we've talked about it over and over. The claim order, all the different things that come with it are to me, extremely valuable. And then now that we've gotten 4 compensatory picks, it just adds.
Are you a little bit more popular here in Indianapolis because you have that number 1 overall pick?
Well, there's no doubt that there's more buzz around the pick, and there's excitement, which is good for our game. I mean, to me, it's exciting. It certainly shows the National Football League is still on a pedestal, and it really is fun for our fans to be able to get excited about that pick and all the picks that will follow. The 33rd pick is going to be a heck of a pick. This draft is pretty deep. I've seen a lot of good players so far, and I'll continue to get to know these young men this week.
Now, obviously, when you have ownership here, GMs and head coaches, those conversations take place. Have teams reached out to you without naming any one of them?
I think it's too early in the process, but I think the dialogue will continue throughout the spring, and again, we'll have to make the best choice for this organization. And to me, again, it's like I said earlier, what pick is going to make the biggest impact on this organization in terms of sustainable success for years to come? Because at the end of the day, that's what we have to do, is put together a roster that our fans are excited about, that's going to give us that chance to win a championship year in and year out.
All right, so I run into Jon Gruden, and no, we were not in the bar. We were outside. So I introduced myself and said I worked for the Cardinals, and he said, "You tell Steve Keim to call me. We want the first overall pick." And so I kind of advanced the story a little bit. I'm like, "What else are you going to give us?"
Yeah.
And he said a 3, actually.
A 3?
A 3.
I got to figure out what trade chart he's looking at. But and I also, John has my number, and I don't know why he hadn't called me yet. So that's kind of fishy that he's going through you to get to me. but John's a good man. I've known John, been friends for years, and I'm sure there'll be some type of dialogue at some point.
Speaking of that, how difficult is it going to be for Mike Mayock now? Because before, everyone relied on his information.
Sure.
He recently said that the night before the draft, he talked to GMs and head coaches, and they wanted to know what his mock looked like.
Sure.
How different is it going to be for him now?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to be exciting for him, because now all of a sudden he doesn't have to talk about 300 players. He can really dial into the top 150 players that they want to focus on, and what guys fit what John does schematically and what Paul Gunther does. So it's going to be fun for him. Mike's a good evaluator. I think he's going to have success there. But at the end of the day, working for a team really keeps you excited. It keeps you passionate, instead of, again, having to look at the big picture. Now you can do it for one franchise, and the goal is to continually win that championship.
All right, we know how active you've been, getting Farrell Cooper, getting DJ Swearinger, going out and address the defense, get a tight end here. I know you have a long list, and there are a lot of needs on this team, but talk about what you've done so far, even though the NFL officially hasn't started yet.
Yeah, I think it was important for us to come out swinging, to come out aggressive. I think we had a plan in place, and it wasn't about just signing players. It was about guys who are fits. Charles Clay, who fits what Cliff does schematically. Guy like Robert Alford, who we had high grades on, who we still think is a talented number 2 corner, fits what Vance does, pressure defense, a lot of press man coverage, and that's what Robert excels in. And to me, this guy could potentially be the best corner we've had opposite Pat Peterson in my tenure here. And then, again, to add a couple other players that will continue to help us moving forward, where now all of a sudden you fill those needs through free agency, and in the draft you take the best player available.
Spoke to Dan Quinn today, and I said, what are the Cardinals getting? And he started off with Brooks Reed, and we talked about his physicality, and he plays with his hair on fire. We've heard that about Marcus Golden. And then he said when you bring in Alford, you're adding speed to your defense.
Yeah.
And obviously teams have to make decisions based on, signing their own players. But you're really excited about those signings.
Really excited. And again, when you look at Robert Alford, the way he plays the game and his toughness and his tenacity, to me it's a great fit for our defense. And not only that, but to be a guy that still has the twitch and the movement skills and the speed down the field that Robert possesses, to me that's a huge coup for us.
Now, these are players that you know. The players that you're talking to this week, you don't really know. And I know the big quote that you always put out, and I'm paraphrasing, you miss more on the person than you do the player. But as you've gotten more as a general manager and over the years, has that process gotten any better to where you're less likely to miss on the person?
Well, I think that as you hone your craft and you try to get better every year, again, it is extremely humbling, particularly when you get to free agency. And we just had our meetings last week, and I can tell you a number of those players that we all felt like were going to be slam dunk good players coming out and were high draft picks, and now there's no buzz or excitement about them in free agency. They're not going to get a big contract. Conversely, there's a number of players who were 4th, 5th, 6th round picks who are going to get big contracts. So again, for everybody in this league, it's an inexact science. The 7th round pick from the New England Patriots was the Super Bowl MVP. So again, to me, it's dialing into how does a guy fit, and does he love the game? Is he passionate? Does he have the toughness? Can't always forecast injuries, but all those other things you can really hone in on and make sure you're making sound decisions.
We've heard the draft very deep on defensive linemen, but I want to focus on the quarterbacks because that's always what everyone wants to talk about. When you look at last year's quarterback class, this year's quarterback class, big difference? I mean, if you're going to compare the two classes as far as...
I would say from a depth standpoint, there's a little more depth. Obviously, there's a couple guys that I think could potentially be franchise quarterbacks in this draft. I haven't had a chance to study them in depth yet because now I'm jumping into that process. But, if you looked at Josh Rosen last year, there's no doubt another year in college under his belt, he would have certainly been one of these top picks. So, he's a guy that we still feel very, very excited about. I don't think that Josh had the benefit of playing with a great supporting cast when you look at the number of injuries we had up front last year and the position we put him in. So moving forward, I think that he'll continue to grow and get better and better.
Speaking of Josh, you made it very clear that, obviously you drafted him for the future and you didn't give up a ton, and obviously you pulled out the trade for Carson Palmer, which bailed us out at the time. How is he going to sync with Cliff and Tom Clements? Because to me, he's going to have two guys in his ear, and it's not going to be too many cooks in the kitchen. I think that's going to go a long way.
And I think what's going to be big for Josh is the way Cliff works is he wants to do things to help Josh succeed. He wants to ask Josh, what do you like? What are the things that you do well? And then he wants to minimize the risk by not putting him in tough positions. And if it's Josh wanting to be in the gun a majority of the time, let's put him in the gun. Let's give him things that are easy, that can make quick decisions, and help him and benefit his career.
You have to protect him. Now, you had a lot of injuries on the offensive line, so how do you go about rebuilding that offensive line with guys who are returning, drafts, and then potentially maybe go out and look at free agents?
I think both. I think we have to dress in free agency and we have to dress in the draft. I mean, you want to continually build for the long haul. But at the end of the day, we have to develop the mentality up front and the physicality to run the football effectively. We know that as much as it's a passing league, you still have to stop the run and run the football to have success. And we didn't do either well last year. So those are two of the things that we have to fix.
Steve, over the years, you've brought in Tony Jefferson, you released Kerry Rhodes and Adrian Wilson, and his agent said go there, and obviously he's made money in the open market. Kareem Martin last year, Marcus Cooper. Let's talk about three defensive players. Rodney Gunther had a career year this year, never missed a game in his career. Obviously, Buck struggled picking up the system, and then you got Marcus Golden coming off the injury. I know that these guys are likely going to test the waters, but when you look at what they've accomplished in moving forward, the key for me is Hassan Reddick looks like he's worthy of a first-round pick.
Yeah, I think there's no doubt that Hassan continues to get better and better. And it's all about, to me, a number of snaps. Because the more snaps Hassan plays, the better his eyes are going to get. And that's just natural from not playing stacked linebacker. In college, he was a pass rusher, played defensive end, and we knew the transition would take a little bit of time, but his athleticism would get him by for the meantime, which it has. But he's continually getting better with his eyes, his instincts, his ability to key and diagnose, which is extremely critical to your success at that position.
On free agency, is there a specific position you're looking at I mean, as far as
I think there's a number of the spots that we have needs, and it goes anywhere from linebacker to outside receiver to obviously offensive line. So we're going to try to address a number of those spots through free agency, but we want to be smart and calculated with the plan. You don't want to go out and just throw a lot of money and guarantee contracts at people who don't deserve it. So you got to make sure the market and the player fit what you want to build.
You started this interview talking about, and you brought up the compensatory picks, a little bit more than you anticipated with the 4, but those last 3 in the 7th round, how valuable are those? Because maybe instead of getting on the phone at the end of the draft and those priority free agents, you could use potentially maybe one of those or all of them.
There's no doubt about it. Or you can package those picks now that you can trade compensatories and you can move up. You can do a number of different things, which again, the more picks, the better chances of hitting you have. And we just want to make sure that Mr. Irrelevant becomes relevant.
We've had a few in the past.
And again, you can hit in every level of the round, and it doesn't, whether it's a starter, whether it's a role player, or a special teamer, you have a chance, again, if you get the right type of mental makeup, to hit throughout the draft.
And look how well you guys did in the undrafted free. And guys that make the roster, usually those are practice squad guys. You're looking at the future. I mean, Dennis Gardeck, demon on special teams.
Yeah.
Zeke Turner, we'll see if he plays in the box. Jalen Tolliver, Trent Sherfield. You really did a good job.
Yeah.
And that comes to your scouting, all the work they put in. Correct?
I think it's certainly credit goes to our scouting staff and the job that those guys do. Again, uncovering every stone, making sure that they're thorough in the process. They spend as much time on those guys as they do on the top picks. I tell our scouts all the time, whether it's late rounds or free agency, find something that you love. Those guys have holes in them. Find something you can hang your hat on and that you can tell me or a head coach that this guy's going to make a difference or an impact on this football team.
We haven't had a chance to talk to you since Kingsbury's entire coaching staff has been completed. What do you like about those guys coming together? Because there's not a lot of familiarity, at least with Kingsbury.
Yes. I think, honestly, the biggest thing that I see in that group is experience. Guys who've done it and done it at a high level, whether it's Sean Kugler, who I think is one of the better offensive line coaches in the league. To me, we really focused on offensive line and defensive coordinator to make sure those guys complemented Cliff well. And there's no doubt in my mind that Vance Joseph and Cougs really set the tone to begin. And that's someone like Billy Davis, to me, who's been a defensive coordinator 3 different places in the National Football League. Marcus Robertson, who's been played at a high level and coached at a high level. A number of different coaches who have been there, done it, and will continue to develop our young players as well as take our older guys and continue to have success with them.
We talked to Robert Elford on Monday, and I said, he talked to Patrick. He loved it when he got here, and the fact that Marcus Robertson was, a guy that worked him out at the Senior Bowl. Recruiting, it happens at this level. People don't realize it, and I know that Sean Kugler, Vikings, Bills, Dolphins. I mean, he was a wanted man.
He was.
And you got him in the building. Talk about the recruiting part.
No, I think whether it's coaches or players, I think that number one, aside from our off-field and on-field issues last year, we have a reputation of being an organization that is a place where you want to be. It's the weather, it's the fan base, it's all the things that come with living in Phoenix in that area. So there are a number of things we can sell. On top of the fact, Michael obviously allows us to do our job. He's an owner that gives us the resources we need, allows us to do our job, and is extremely supportive. And then, again, all the different things that come with the organization, to me is it puts us in a position where I felt like when I became the GM, we can recruit here. We can make a difference. It's a different place than getting off the plane somewhere else and it's 20 degrees. I mean, you get off the plane and it's sunshine and palm trees. What's there not to like?
Exactly.
Last question, and you've been making the media rounds, but you're now going to be doing the interviewing later on these next 3 days.
Right.
You plan on using all available time and
yes.
players?
And I'm a lot tougher than you guys are. I'm a little.
Did Arians actually ask when's the last time you smoked weed?
I'm not so much in that language, but Bruce made those interviews quite colorful.
We'd love to be a part of that. I mean,
this guy's always trying.
If there's availability in that room,
you know what I tell him? Stay in your lane.
Stay in your lane, exactly. Stay in your lane. Know your role.
Steve, appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Steve.
Know my role. Again, MJ, it doesn't hurt to ask.
Oh, I get it.
What's the worst that can happen? I get told no? Okay.
I know, but, stay in our lanes.
I'm still going to try to push for it.
Listen. Look how informative he is.
Absolutely. Appreciate
it's like we're just having a conversation.
Yeah.
And we got 2, microphones, 3 microphones, and we're just having a conversation. Listen, he's got a lot of work to do here. We'll stay in our lanes.
All right. Certainly appreciate the general manager just sitting down with us here from Indianapolis on Cards Cover 2. A reminder, still to come, we'll let the Bird Gang sound off. Still time to get those questions in using the hashtag Cards Cover 2, hashtag Cards Cover 2, using the number 2 to get involved in the show. But before we do that, we're going to hand the show off to the Cardinals Pro Scouting Director, Quentin Harris, as he takes us on a tour of the bench press process.
So right now where we're at, we're in the bench press area. And as you can see, the little walkway that, I call it the gauntlet, that the players will walk through. And as you walk through as a player, it can be a little intimidating because right here you have scouts, you have coaches, also media, all sorts of personnel around here. And as you walk through, you come up this staging area right here. And behind this bench press area, they'll have you on deck as well. So you'll pop around, and as you can see the blue chairs right there, that's where the coaches sit that count your reps. So they'll have 2 coaches counting your reps. You get under there, and it's really intense. There's a lot of excitement. So if you've been in a weight room before, it's like that as far as the intensity level. But it's very exciting, and you get the best out of guys.
Exciting certainly would be an understatement. I mean, as we talked to you about it at the top of the show, just the loud noises and just some cheering, but encouraging from the fans and even the fellow prospects. When you're up on that stage doing the bench press, you're getting encouragement from everyone, including the guys that are following you or have just completed the number of reps. And again, the offensive linemen, in the 20 range you'd like to see.
27.
Running backs today were high teens. So
wide receivers maybe high teens, early 20s, because you want to get off press coverage.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, they do this every year, and during the Super Bowl they open it up for the fans. Okay, on that Monday night when they introduce both teams.
Super Bowl night,
right? And then they'll allow maybe season ticket holders, and there were season ticket holders today representing all 32 teams. So that was their
fan base. The crowd.
Okay. We have these credentials, okay? Now, technically, we could get in the stadium, but we're not going to get very far.
Now who needs to stay in their lane?
We're not even going to try it. So, in other words, this is the only thing fans can see. No fan is getting in, or media. Now, some of the networks have a partnership with obviously the NFL Network, ESPN. They're TV partners. They're in there.
You can watch it at home on television.
That is correct.
Just not live.
Nobody else is getting in there, but at least they decided let's reward season ticket holders, and that's where it got. And you got a strength and conditioning coach who's trying to encourage you 2 more reps, 3 more reps. Now, last year, unfortunately, I did see Billy Price from Ohio State, Terrace Peck on the bench. I was there. Now, he had a press conference the following morning, wanted to get a second opinion. He played last year. He was drafted in the first round. So you don't want to see it happen, but I did witness it live last year. It didn't affect him. I didn't hear anybody get hurt this year. That's good news, and now we still got positions to come through here. But, you want to see how strong your D lineman's going to be, your offensive lineman. But I tried it myself.
Yes, we put Mike Jurecki to the test. Just how many times would he be able to bench press 225 pounds? And, it was a little bit of amazing, just the amount of strength that Jurecki has. Look at it. It's great form and very easily able to get that bar up and down from his chest all the way up. And, again, locked it in, as we were hearing today, to make sure that every rep counted. And at the end, the official count for Mike Jurecki on the bench press, 225 pounds, 15 is the magic number.
I struggle a little bit at the end.
Well, of course, after so many reps. Yeah, and the best was the flex right at the end.
Well, I have my glasses on, though. I'm not even doing the show with my glasses.
All right. Full disclosure, the bench press where the draft prospects is over our right shoulder. There is a bench press photo op.
Here it goes.
Over to our over to our right. And, yeah, that wasn't really 125 pounds. Oh, 225, was it? Probably not even close.
They're
20 pounds?
They're the weight of 2 Wheaties boxes. I didn't see you try it.
Of course not. That's what we have you here for on Cards Cover 2. Put you through the ringer.
Hey, listen, like I said yesterday, if you can't poke fun of yourself, I'm in the wrong business.
Now we'll just have to see if, because you say, when you work out, it's not immediately afterwards, it's the next day. So we'll see how MJ feels
I was able to
tomorrow.
do 12-ounce curls last night. We're good. Now, okay. How many? I couldn't do one over there. You see somebody on Twitter wants to do a 40-yard
I did see
dash.
that, yes.
Against
Grialou
you?
versus Jurecki, 40-yard time. No.
I
We
don't know
could
if-
set it
I
up,
don't
but
know
we're
if you
not.
want to pan the camera because we're set up pretty good here and we got a good backdrop. I see about 60 yards of carpet right now.
It's not happening.
You won't run the 40
No.
against me?
I might pull a hamstring. I can't do that. I can't go on IR. Sorry.
What about Derek?
We could put Darren Urban and
I
Kyle
don't know why I
Odegaard.
dragged Darren
AZ
in
Card.
there.
Well, you did.
Well,
AZCardinals.com. We can
I
have our
wanna
own
go
little
against
combine.
guys that, like maybe I have a chance. Like Grant, other guys on
Oh
our
wow!
staff.
Now you're just throwing everyone in Cardinals
it's like-
broadcasting
no, I'm
department
just
under the
saying,
bus.
Listeners they want to see us to run a 40, and I'm just trying to think of other
Okay.
options.
Well, if you ran against Grant Greeley right now, I think he'd win. He's in his left foot's in a
That's
boot.
why I
so,
mentioned him.
all right, let's not waste any more time. Let's hear what the Bird Gang is sounding off on here on this Thursday as we come to you live, day 2 of our coverage from the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We'll begin with Twitter. User wants to know, which side of the line do you think this year's bench press champion is from? Do you think the O-line performed better or the D-line? And the D-line is going to be working out on Friday and into Saturday.
See, we don't get these questions until they come on air. I could have looked this up. It's just a guess. I'm going to go O-line.
O-line?
I mean, D-line, you still have to have that punch, and you have to have that get-off, but the offensive line has the ability to grab you from the get-go. So I could be wrong. I will look it up, but I'm going to go to offensive line.
Okay, something that we'll have to check back in with you once we return to Arizona and when all of these
I'm gonna find
measurables are out.
After the show.
Yeah, but if the D-line is still going into Saturday,
True. Okay, yes.
that's we need
that's
to kind of
accurate.
make sure it's official.
Yeah.
All right, moving to Instagram. This user wants to know, do you think the Cardinals should try to trade down or stay with that number 1 overall pick?
I hear this all the time. Copy and paste this. You got to find a trade partner.
That's true.
It's like dancing. You got to find, it takes 2 to tango. You need to find a partner. Are they open for business? I think so. I asked Jon Gruden today, is the first pick of the draft attractive? Yes. Find me a trade partner, and then I can get into that conversation. They're not going to give away that pick. Unfortunately, we're coming off a 3-13 season. This team needs to get better. So tell me who the trade partner is, and if they do move down, they're not moving down too far.
No, and you look at what is immediately behind them. We always talk about the Raiders at number 4, but there's also the Giants and Jaguars at 6 and 7. Moving down to 7, maybe if there are 2 teams that move up that want quarterbacks, and then all of a sudden you've got 4 defensive specialists that you can sit there and look at, whether it's a edge rusher or an interior D lineman or a corner or maybe an offensive tackle if you're really, really excited that they blew you away, whether here at the Combine or during the interview process. But dropping down to 7 might be a little bit too far.
Okay, if we just
I guess it depends on what the return is as far as here's
true.
what we're going to give you for number 1.
True, but you start going to 7, now you're getting the 3rd best defensive end. Now you're getting the 3rd inside linebacker, maybe 2 because there's a couple linebackers. Yeah, you can get the number 1 corner.
Or number 1 offensive lineman. We want to talk about the cornerback position again? Okay.
No, we're going to let that go until the draft. Yeah, I mean, you may get the 2nd or 3rd offensive lineman. That's not what they want to do here. This team needs to get better. They need playmakers. They need difference makers. And again, both Williams from Alabama. whether it's a lineman. He's starting to drop a little bit. Jonah Williams and then Quentin Williams.
Yeah, and then there's Josh Allen, and there's Ed Oliver.
Right. So,
and
again, you don't want to go down too far. They need a plug-and-play guy. Now, all those guys I just mentioned are plug-and-play guys. But when we start getting to 6, 7, 8, 9, you're getting the second or third best player at that position. Now, check back 3 years from now, they could be better than when we were. But right now, based on what we know, you got to get a guy that's going to play right away and start.
Yeah. Back to the questions. User wants to know, which combine players do you guys have your eye on? You can go first, MJ. Is there someone out here? I mean, we all know about Kyler Murray and Nick Bosa, but is there someone else that you've either read about, seen, that you would like to see what they do, whether meeting the media, because that's a huge part of this, is how do you handle yourself in front of the cameras, because it's different meeting the media here versus maybe at your local stations, as far as your college team, who the reporters that are covering you on the college level, and then of course what they might do if they decide to do the on-field testing.
It's a great question. As we get closer, I'll be able to give you more names, but we focus so much on just the first round.
Yes.
Okay, that's all we've talked about here. We're going first, and listen, the way you build the belly of your football team is rounds 2 to 7. That's where you own their rights for the next 3 or 4 years. So I look at the Cardinals. They have major needs across the board. Now, they're going to address some of those they already have in free agency. They'll continue to do that. But this team needs an inside linebacker. You're probably not going to draft them in the first round. Probably if you don't get a wide receiver in the second round, maybe you go linebacker. So it's going to dictate what they do in March, because we've watched Steve Keim. What they don't do in free agency, they have a tendency to do in the draft. I'm looking at some. I'm going to talk about local guys.
Yes, I'm glad you brought that up. N'Keal Harry, Emmanuel Butler.
Yeah.
Both of those players, both wide receivers, ASU and NAU respectively, they'll meet the media on Friday and then do their on-field testing on Saturday. But certainly locally, those are two wide receivers that could make a case for maybe late first round or certainly day 2.
Yeah, and Wren.
Rennell
Wren from ASU. I mean, he's got this twitch to him. He looks like he rushed a passer. I don't know if he's a D-tackle, defensive end. I guess we'll find out on his measurements. And unfortunately, U of A didn't have anybody. But some guys like Brian Murphy that have gone to high school, Ryan Finley, I'm rooting for those guys because they played their high school ball, and I want to see more kids stay in school in Arizona State. Unfortunately, he went to Boise State and NC State. But I'll have more names for you once we get through the thick of this first round because, again, we focus so much on it, and there's so much at stake money-wise and for your future. But really, you build your team. Besides the first and second pick is the third day, the fourth round, fifth round. I mean, look at the guys that they've gotten over the years. Like Rodney Gunther was a fourth round pick. Last year they get Corey Cunningham. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work out with J.J. Nelson, a 6th round pick, but I'll have more names for you. It's just I'm going to have to wait until free agency to see what the needs are going into the draft.
The one name I'll throw out right now, it's a wide receiver, and he had an outstanding Senior Bowl, and that is the UMass wideout Andy Isabella. Not very big, 5'9", 188, but certainly someone who produced at the Senior Bowl, produced at UMass, smaller school, but someone who you might be able to find late and maybe contribute, perhaps not right away, but certainly down the road.
Okay.
It's just a name.
I'm glad you brought him up because I've asked about him. Because I think in the Cliff Kingsbury's offense, they're going to have some slot receivers, okay? And, you look at some guys, Cole Beasley's out there, okay? I don't know what his 40 time is, but you got Christian Kirk. And they're going to have to add some slot receivers because everything is within 5 to 7 yards line of scrimmage. Again, I don't think they're going to go 5 wide, but we could see them go 3 and 4 wide. We know 3 wide is going to be their base offense. I was told he's going to get overdrafted.
Okay.
The tape doesn't match. Now, it's a great story. Of course, we're going to refer to him as Julian Edelman or Wes Welker. But somebody thinks that he could go on Saturday morning, 4th round, but they think on paper he's more of a 5th or 6th round pick. I did ask about him. They think he's going to get overdrafted. So that means somebody's going to take a flyer on because in this day and age now, you look at Cooper Kupp. How much did the Rams miss him?
Yes, a lot once he went down last season.
Exactly. It put more pressure on Gurley in the running game. And the reason why is the slot cornerback is your 3rd corner. Now, teams are going to have to pay $5 or $6 million for a slot corner now because you're going against in slot corners. They put up big numbers. Julian Edelman, Cooper Kupp. So the reason why they attack that is because usually you're going against a third corner. So I think the Cardinals are going to have to get a couple slot receivers. I don't know if he's on the list. I was just told that he's going to get overdrafted.
Andy Isabella, again, is the name just to keep an eye on because he did make such a big splash at the Senior Bowl. And that's going to wrap up this edition of Bird Gang Sound. I appreciate all the questions. Of course, we'll get to them again on Friday. Hashtag Cards Cover 2. Hashtag Cards Cover 2 with the number 2 to get involved in the show. Tomorrow, our last day here in Indianapolis as far as doing the show. And, of course, a busy day as well. We will hear from N'Keal Harry, Ryan Finley, Emmanuel Butler, and Kyler Murray speaks on Friday.
E.F. Hutton.
I'm just saying. We'll discuss it on Friday.
He's talking tomorrow.
He's talking tomorrow. Apparently, a lot of people want to hear from Kyler Murray. Special thanks to those behind the scenes here on Cards Cover 2. Tim Delaney, Jim Alejandro, Grayson Choi, JC Aranda working the camera here with us in Indianapolis.
Great
From
job,
our partner,
fellas.
Mike Jurecki, I'm Craig Grialou. This has been Cards Cover 2, live from the Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. We'll talk to you on Friday.
Thank you, fellas.